Welcome to Faith at Work, the podcast where we inspire and equip professionals to live out their Christian faith in the workforce. Whether you're navigating leadership, balancing work-life challenges, or looking to make a deeper impact, we're here to equip and guide you on how to bring your faith into work. Now here's your host, the director of the Unity Foundation in Alexandria, Minnesota, Kelsey Tim.
Today on the Faith at Work podcast, we are talking about workplace culture. It's how it's shaped, why it matters, and how leaders can build environments where people truly thrive. Joining me today is Erin Berns, a financial advisor at NorthRock Partners with over a decade of experience helping individuals, families, and business owners navigate life and legacy planning. Based in Alexandria, Erin is known not only for his financial expertise, but also for his leadership in the community. He serves on multiple local boards and is a director here at the Unity Foundation. Erin brings a thoughtful, kingdom-minded perspective to both business and culture, and I can't wait for you to hear this conversation. So welcome, Erin.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We did a little pre-podcast conversation and talked about a lot of fun stuff. So we're like, all right, Lord, you direct the conversation because you and I both have the gift of gab. So we'll see where this goes.
Give me a mic and we're up for, could be anything.
It could be anything. So buckle up if you're listening. So Erin, can you share a little bit about your current role and what workplace culture means to you?
Sure. At NorthRock Partners, I serve as an advisor focused on tailoring financial and lifestyle advisory services to clients and their families. A little bit about culture. That's such a great question. I believe that culture is built on what leaders allow and tolerate. It's kind of the standardized playbook we all run. So in essence, if I allow shortcuts or complacency, that becomes kind of a new standard. And if I consistently model excellence and service and integrity, those become the plays that my team and clients come to expect.
Yeah, that's really good. So have you ever experienced a really healthy or unhealthy workplace culture? And if so, what stood out to you?
Yeah, I would say that from a healthy perspective, I think there's this concept of service to others, which is also a core value at NorthRock. And I think of that through the lens as a Christian leader in the workplace of just this servant leader component of service to others, and values really kind of drive how we treat each other and how we ultimately advise clients. As I apply that to my day-to-day work, I think about that even in the home. How can I lead well at home and be a servant leader or a service to others, to my wife and my kids? And it seems daunting at times, but it's kind of that concept of things being really simple from a behavioral standpoint, but it's not always easy.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true. So we're going to talk about defining culture and leadership. And you just did that a little bit, Erin, but many people struggle to define culture even though they feel it. So how could you put words to that definition?
Yeah. One scripture comes to mind, Luke 6:45, which says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. And so if we're aligned inside, it should reflect outside to others as well. So I think of that as the culture is the heartbeat of an organization. It's not the mission statement, it's the behaviors that we repeat every day.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Yeah, you should maybe say that again.
Yeah, so culture is the heartbeat of an organization. It's not the mission statement, it's the behaviors we repeat every day.
Because that's how we create habits, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. So what are some signs that a culture needs to shift?
Yeah, I think that as humans, jealousy, pride, selfish ambitions, there's so many different components as we think about the world and how that really impacts us as humans and how we're perceived by others in the community. And the pressures of that can really kind of start to creep in and start to kind of change our heart, which in turn changes our behaviors. And so it can be a kind of this component of waking up every day and kind of dying to ourselves and saying, hey, Lord, like, what do you have for me? Where do you need me? Where are you calling me? And just having that guiding light as we wake up, and kind of persevere through the different components that life throws at us.
Yeah, I'm just reflecting on, I think it's my 5th career now, like completely different. So I've been able to work in different places, and I've been my own business owner at one point as well. But I think of just like the attitudes of people. Maybe you run a large organization and you're not maybe rubbing shoulders with everybody. I think that'd be a really good pulse, is like, what's the attitude when you're walking through the building? Like, are people excited to be there? Or is it this, like, I have to go to work today, drudge? Are they doing their work with joy, or are they stressed? I think those would be some really good indicators of like, ooh, maybe we need a change in this department. And it could just be department. It could be overall based off of obviously how big the company is.
Yeah, man, I think that there's a lot to that. I'm trying to kind of unpack all of that. That was awesome. Like, kind of unpack that in my mind. But I think, how we show up is so critical, right? There's not only in the workplace, but how we show up as, I've got 2 young girls, 9 and 7, and it's like, well, how do I show up for them as a dad? What can I do? Because they're kind of learning by seeing. And so how am I perceived to them, and how can I, build the culture within the household to reflect Christ in my family, but also how do I lead my family and my kids well? And then through the workplace lens, I think, how we show up is really everything, because there's so many times where, there's kind of this old saying of like, leave your baggage at the door, right? Don't bring things into the workplace. Don't bring personal into the workplace. And, I think that there's a little bit of truth to that, but I think that the more that we can have people come as they are, I think that creates opportunities through a leadership lens of really getting to know those people that we work with. Because as humans, I think that there's this innate thing that kind of dwells in us, that people want to be heard, they want to be seen, and they really want to be loved. And so how do we get to know them on a personal level so that we can give them better coaching, better advice, and create this culture in the workplace where they know that it's a safe place and that they can show up as their best self, and they're not going to be judged or feel like there's this kind of this added pressure to put on this facade or this like fake self. I'd rather them be their authentic self.
That's really good. So there was a post that I saw, and part of it said, culture is initiated by leadership. So what does that practically look like?
The concept around that of just being seen and heard and loved, and leaders showing up as their best self and really coming prepared to walk alongside colleagues, or, if we're applying it to the workplace, or if we look at, again, like family or even in the community, like how do we come alongside people to meet them where they are and help, be a coach and a light and a friend to help them on their journey.
I'm thinking of an example where I didn't have the best experience, and it was really, really early on in my career. I was fresh out of college, and I struggled to find a job. I got married young, and I didn't have any experience, so people didn't want to hire me. And so I took this position. It was for a large corporation. There's probably like 400 people there, but I didn't feel valued or seen by my boss. I don't think he thought I was capable of much, maybe because I was younger. I don't know, but I was bored out of my mind in my job. I would get my work done within like an hour or two. check to see if there's other things I could do. And there wasn't. So I met a lot of friends in that building.
Yeah.
But one thing that I learned from that is I wanted somebody to see my value, that I had more than just this specific skill set that I was hired for, which was not my degree. And it was more of an entry-level position, but I wanted somebody to see me in that building to be like, oh, she's capable of more, like to come alongside me and to champion me. And I didn't have that experience, and that's okay. But from my personal experience now, I don't want anybody to feel that way. Fast forward to 20 years later, and I was working in a different field, and I had a boss that took a risk on me, and I had never done this job before. But he championed me. He believed in me. He let me make mistakes, take risks. And it was a night and day experience. So I'm thankful for both because, like I said, I wouldn't want somebody to have that same experience that I had when I was 22, right? Fast forward to about 15 years later. And it does, leadership matters. And I was at the bottom of the totem pole, when I was in my 20s, but the leadership impacted how I felt at my job. And so we went back to how culture is defined around behavior, right? And it's really, and I think this is where coming in and praying about, okay, Lord, give me eyes to see the people that you do. Help me to call out their gifts that you've placed in them. Because sometimes we need that. We need somebody to come alongside and say, hey, Erin, I see this in you. And that's amazing. I'm going to help you grow and steward that gift that God's given you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think when people stop following just some of those simple disciplines in showing up well, I think that it's an early sign of, hey, is there a cultural shift here? Is there something that we're doing or not doing? Or are we, kind of falling away from the intended playbook, so to speak, of what we stand for and try and unite around when it comes to culture in the workplace.
Yeah. So how have you personally grown as a leader, Erin, when it comes to shaping culture?
Yeah, I think one of the things that stands out, I read a book recently by Will Guidara called Unreasonable Hospitality. And basically it calls it kind of going beyond expectations so people feel deeply valued. And in my world, that means people see we care not just about the numbers or about their story. It's the same principle that drives culture within our firm, is that how can we go above and beyond? How can we show up every day, but really create this kind of sense of unreasonable hospitality to have these surprise and delight moments with not only our clients, but our colleagues as well. And so that's something that I'm trying to, and not always the greatest at this, but I'm making progress in that direction as a leader, to create these opportunities to thank and to praise and to call out, like you were talking about, call out these really cool things that people have, these gifts that people have, and how do we pull those out on a daily basis to help them feel empowered and have some autonomy and equipped to really be their authentic self.
Yeah, I'm going to do a quick little shameless plug right here. He was one of the speakers last year at the Global Leadership Summit. So that's a perk. You get to hear and learn about these different speakers with different topics, and then you get to go on and learn more and read their books.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Erin, why are core values and a clear mission so essential for shaping culture?
Proverbs 4:23 says, above all else, guard your heart. And I think values guard the organization's heart. One of my good friends, Mark Dieterding, wrote a book called Leading Jesus Way, and it talks about the concept of values being kind of the rules of the game and protecting how we show up for each other and for clients on a daily basis. And so living these values daily, I think about this just naturally through a behavioral kind of finance lens as I apply it to what my day in the workplace looks like. And success often comes down to following a simple plan with discipline, but simple doesn't mean easy. And we kind of talked a little bit about this earlier today, that it requires showing up consistently, even when emotions pull you kind of in other directions. And so I think that's true when it comes to culture and, building these core values of, okay, as an organization, what do we want to stand on? What are those fundamental kind of non-negotiable things that we want to stand on as an organization? And then it allows us to kind of the freedom to, function within that proverbial playbook.
Well, and I think we all love boundaries. Maybe subconsciously you don't realize how much you love them, but you're talking about their guardrails. It provides safety for the workplace, right? And so I think that's that, and then we can be driven by that. So when things come our way, we go back to that. We're all on the same page. These are our values. Does it align with our values and mission? Or maybe it's your purpose statement. So, shout out to Mark Dieterding. His book's amazing. He's got his Triune Leadership Services program that you can go through that will help you walk through this for your organization and personally as well. So that's a great resource if that's something you don't have, but you want to learn how to do that. Okay, we have it on paper, Erin. And I think some people stop there, right? We, as a company, we came around the table, we figured this out. Now it's posted on the wall, but that's just like the first baby step. The next big step is really like, okay, how do we actually live these out? So how do you move from stating values to actually living them out?
Yeah, so you've kind of set the stage. You've created these things on paper, right? And I think that if we look at I think of this kind of through an ongoing training lens of just continuing to create the time and the space with colleagues and those clients that we serve to almost like an athlete reviews like the game film, right? We can kind of go back and review the wins, or where was the gap there, where some opportunities lie, or it gives you the opportunity to celebrate wins and also look at those opportunities as a team to say, okay, is this in alignment with the direction that we want to go, or is this something that we need to work on as we move in the direction of those core values? And so I think having kind of that training and those ongoing check-ins of getting the pulse of the organization, and I think that happens kind of at all levels within the organization, across the team, all the way to you personally. And I think one of the things that I try to think about, I did some leadership development with one of my great friends, Scott Weethoff. And at the time, he was working with an organization called Giant. Kind of this key theme that runs through there, calling you to it. The better you know yourself, as soon as you know yourself, you can start to lead yourself. So it's this concept of knowing yourself to lead yourself. And I think that, with that, if it starts kind of with your personal, knowing yourself personally, the better we can know ourselves personally, the better we can show up, the bigger impact that has, the easier it is to live out those values. I think it's a great concept to kind of reflect upon.
Absolutely. I think of my 20-year-old self who probably would have said, oh yeah, I know myself, but had no idea. I think that's really important for young professionals. When you go into job interviews, it's like, what's a weakness of yours? And I'm like, well, I don't know what my weakness is. Well, now I can tell you a whole bunch of my weaknesses. But I think that's the joy of team, right?
Right.
Because we can't be it all for everybody. That's a lie if you believe that. We need people because God's made us each so differently. We all have strengths and weaknesses, and that's the beauty of being on a team. And so if you're a young professional, or maybe you're not, and you're like, wow, I have not done a lot of personal development of just like really sitting and realizing, okay, this is something, what comes natural, what's easy. Those are usually like your gifts. I think, a gift of mine is I'm a connector, or I love hosting hospitality. That comes easy. It brings me joy. It's fun. And I think of Nicole on our board, and she's a numbers person. And that does not bring me joy. But I'm so thankful for Nicole, because she's so great. She is so great, but she can come alongside and help me. She's that second set of eyes, because I'll miss things. My brain isn't wired that way.
Right.
So if you haven't been able to figure out these are my strengths and weaknesses, I really would encourage you to do that. And that's a great program. Even just, I'm trying to think of the website and I can't right now, but just like figuring out even like your spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
The strengths finders. There's so many awesome tools out there.
I kind of nerd out a little bit on like the Myers-Briggs stuff, personality traits, what makes people tick, why do people make decisions the way that they do? I'm just fascinated by that stuff. And I think that's so true. I think that, we're so uniquely designed and created with these gifts and talents. And I think as a young professional, I just reflect back to when I was in my 20s, it was like, I kind of wanted to be all things to all people. Growing up, here's just a really short story, but growing up, my mom was very adamant, and my dad was too, but my mom, was more vocal about it, that she said, you have to be well-rounded. You have to be well-rounded. And so I was in everything from plays to musicals to sports to, you name it, Boy Scouts, and my sister was the same way. We were involved in everything, and it gave us an opportunity to try a lot of different things. I came to realize, pretty early on that I'm not great at anything, but I'm pretty good at a lot of different things. But I think that there's some components there where you can reflect on those failures and those weaknesses and say, hey, you know what? I need to make sure that I'm staying in my lane, that there's kind of going back to these guide rails, that if I can just really focus on the things that I do really well, and I think about this even in the organization and in the workplace, that we have these specific roles, right? And biblically it talks about, we're the hands and the feet, and there's eyes and there's ears, and like every component of your body has its specific role. And I'm excited to maybe have you maybe speak a little bit to that here in a second, but I think that there's this component that, we feel like we need to be excellent at everything. And I think the world kind of pressures us to have this feeling, and I think social media, doesn't do a really great job at that too. That, the reality is we are very imperfect people. And so to strive for perfection, I think is okay, but we need to really find a way to celebrate the gain that we have had. I'm actually reading this book right now called The Gap and the Gain. And it's this concept where you're working to celebrate the progress, because so often we look at, maybe we started at a 1 and now we're a 7. We focus on that goal that we set out to be a 30. I'm just using some numbers here, but for analogy's sake, but I was a 1 and now I'm a 7 and I'm working to be 30, and we get stuck in this gap of 7 to 30, but we don't look back at the progress that we've made from a 1 to a 7. And so I think the more we can reflect back and say, look at where I was and now look at where I am, instead of being so fixated on the future, it can become it can create anxiety. It can get us, start to feel overwhelmed. And me personally, kind of going back to know yourself to lead yourself, is I know that I have a tendency to focus on the 10% of the things that are not going well in my life. And we don't take enough time to celebrate the 90% of the things that are going very well, and I think that knowing that about myself, I didn't know that about myself, early in my career or early on. And so I just thought that I wasn't good enough, or I wasn't achieving, or I was constantly failing, or, what have you. And so, anyway, I think that there's this kind of human nature to feel like we should be doing all things for all people. And, it's just not realistic. And that's not what God has created us to be. We have gifts, we have talents, and we have all these cool people in our life that we can pull in to give us wisdom and to pour into, relationships that have those gifts. So to be able to be aware and recognize those things, I think is incredible.
Yeah, I think it's really important to have a culture of celebration. I have another job, and I joke and say my title there is the director of fun. My husband and I have an insurance business, and we're a very small team. And my husband is more of the details. He's very type A, and I'm more of the dreamer. And I love to celebrate. I think life is, we've gone through a lot of loss in our life, losing people way too soon. And it really helped me to just life is short, and it's every day there's something to celebrate. And I think that rolls into then cultivating a life of gratitude. I think that's so important, where, like you said, we can get stuck on all the things that aren't going well, but there's way more things that we can be so thankful for, and just really and helping our children to start to cultivate that in their life as well. And, I used to get really stuck on the word with performance or perfection. And I constantly failed, because we're never going to be perfect. It's Christ perfected in us. It's that grace, that divine enablement that allows us to do the things that he's called us to. And, I look back on my career, and nothing that I do has been ever my dream. I wanted to be corporate America, climb the ladder, prove to the world how amazing I was, right? And then the Lord's like, honey, I got a different plan for you. And you're going to do all the jobs that you said you would never do. You're going to eat a lot of humble pie. You're going to die to yourself 100 times over and over again. And so I would really encourage you to submit your career to the Lord. He made you. He knows exactly what you need for each season. And I think that there's different gifts get pulled out of us in different seasons. That you're I'm in this role because God called me to this role. It was never on my radar to be the executive director of the Unity Foundation, but the Lord's like, this is where I'm going to have you for this season. I've prepared you for this job the last 20 years. And I can see the different giftings where I've been in admin positions. And then, my degree is in communications. But I think if we can go into our career with that lens of, okay, God, you've called me to this job for this season. What do you want to grow in me? What do you want me to know? What do you want me to do? And there's going to be people that we meet that are going to sharpen us, that are going to see our potential and call us out. And then we get to be that for other people. And I think that even goes into discipleship, right? You can be discipling people at your workplace, and then we need to be discipled as well. And that isn't just biblically, but just career-wise too. It's the mentoring, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's so important that we have to let go of the word perfection. Can't even say it anymore. But I joke with my kids, and I use the phrase at home, I am training you to reign in life, because we're called to rule and reign with Christ, right?
Yeah.
And it's when they don't want to do things. And then I'm like, we do things with excellence, even if we don't want to do it. And excellence does not mean perfect, but it's just doing your best. That's what excellence is. And so I think all those things matter, and just really focusing on, yes, it's good to have goals, but it's okay, Lord, what are you building in my life in this season?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My school is coming closer and closer for the start of school for the kiddos. And, now we're going to be in that season of homework and all these different, a little bit of change, right? And kind of to echo a little bit of that, we tell our kids all the time, you can do hard things. You can do hard things. And we, kind of speaking into them, we are a family who does hard things. There are a lot of things that we need to do, that we're called to do, that we don't really love.
Right.
And we need to show up well, because people are, whether it be teammates in the sports that they're going to do or at school, we need to show up well. We need to show up well for our friends, for our teachers, for our colleagues in the workplace, as husbands and wives. and fathers and moms, like we got to show up well. And I think that all is part of culture. I mean, culture is our humans, right? We are the community, we are the culture, and we get to kind of create the environment that is best for us, that we can thrive in, right? We all want to pursue, happiness and greatness and, all these things. We aspire to grow in our careers and kind of continue to evolve and change and continue to work toward those goals and those things that we've kind of set out for our lives. And I think that there's an incredible opportunity to come alongside each other and support them and challenge them, right? There's this constant like support and challenge component within, all aspects of life.
Mm-hmm. I'm having this visual when you talked about we can do hard things. I used to do group fitness classes all the time, specifically like HIIT classes. And I can hear Heather Godfrey saying, you can do anything for 60 seconds or you can do anything for 30 seconds. But it's like you don't know what you're actually capable unless you're pushed past comfort, right? I don't think God's ever asked us to live comfortably.
Right.
Just read the Bible. Yeah. They did not live comfortably at all. And so if you find yourself, yes, there's seasons, right, where we can take a break, but I think we're called to live in the tension. And I think so in my home right now, here at the Unity Foundation, we just had a ton of events. And so my house looks like a bomb went off because I was just dumping things and then getting ready for the next one. And I feel overwhelmed. Yeah. And then I don't want to do anything. Right. So that's where I'm like, okay, Josh, I need you. Like there's times where my office, it ends up being like the dumping room and it just gets to be too much. And then I freeze and I'm like, I need a friend to help me sort this all out. That's how my house is right now. And I think of like in the workplace, what are those things that feel overwhelming or just super challenging where you're really living in the tension? And I think that's that beautiful piece of teamwork where you can bring somebody in to like come with you. Like I just want Josh to hold my hand to help clean my house right now because it's out of control in my brain. I love things. I think we all thrive and function better in organization.
Totally.
And so I think that's really important too, is like, don't quit because it's uncomfortable or because you don't like the tension. You have to press into it. And that's where we get to build those muscles. And it's like it's resistant training, right?
Yeah.
And so then I will get less overwhelmed the next time I'm dealt with a similar situation because it's that muscle memory. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually can do this. I didn't die.
Yeah. Time under tension.
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple things that you said there, just, this being uncomfortable, and there's this component of like uncomfortable grace, right? And one of my favorite sermons that I listened to recently, Dr. Paul Tripp, and if he's listening to this, forgive me if I get this quote wrong, but something that's stuck in my head from one of these sermons that I recently listened to is this concept and he's talking about Jesus walking on water and calling Peter out of the boat. And he says, God will take you where you didn't intend to go to produce in you something that you wouldn't be able to do on your own. And it's just like, like there's these times where we're going to be uncomfortable and we have to have a hard conversation with colleague, or we have to have these different components, tough conversations, or we have to do hard things. And some of the best fruits and the biggest victories come out of these seasons of being uncomfortable, and that you have this concept of God's grace kind of leading you through that. And then when you get to the other side, you're like, oh my goodness, like this, I wouldn't have ever been able to do this on my own. This is not what I would have chosen to do from a career path. This isn't what I would wake up in the morning and say, this is what I'm going to do. There's those seasons where things get thrown at us I think of client calls or client meetings, and they might throw something at me that I wasn't anticipating, but we'll be super prepared and we'll figure it out and we'll build a strategy around it. But there's these components of and then you look at the fruit that comes through that on the other side, and it builds trust, and it builds, there's this component of integrity and care, and this concept of people feeling loved and heard and cared for. And I think all of those things are intertwined.
I've just found that I'm desperate for Jesus every single day. I think we have to live our life that way, that realizing I really can't do anything on my own. It's his spirit that empowers me. It's grace. I love the definition for grace is divine enablement. So it's doing things we can never do on our own. And I think we have to live from that place of desperation for him. Because if we can just keep doing everything in our own strength, are we really partnering with him?
Right.
Because I actually just got set free from self-reliance. It's something that I didn't realize I had partnered with since I was a young child, feeling this need to do everything on my own. And God never called us to live self-reliant. He wants us to rely on him. And I think that's something that in American culture or Western culture, we don't necessarily, our daily needs are met. I would say the majority of America lives in comfort compares to the rest of the world. And God wants us to be desperate for him. And so we have to keep our heart in check with that we're not just going through the motions, that we're inviting him into every part of our day. Before we started this podcast, we prayed and we asked the Lord to lead and to direct us. When the first thing when we get out of our bed, it's all right, just acknowledging his presence. Good morning, Father. Good morning, Jesus. Good morning, Holy Spirit. Would you lead and guide me all the way till we put our head back on our pillow? And I think that really helps us to stay in check. Okay, God, how would you handle this situation? I have to have this conversation with Joe. I'm just using that as a name, not really Joe, but, but just inviting the Holy Spirit in so that we can be reliant on him. And yes, he's given us gifts, and that's beautiful too, but it's really just all throughout the day going back to him. I think it's Ryan Skoog. We had him as a speaker for one of our lunches, and he wrote a book, Lead with Prayer. And he talks about hanging out with my best friend, Jesus, and just scheduling time throughout your work day. Selah, the word Selah means pause in the presence. So have Selah breaks, put them on, put your phone, set an alarm and just write Selah, pause, and just be aware that his presence is with you. That helps us to really get to that realization that we need him. And because I think we can get stuck, and I'm guilty of this. This week has been crazy and I haven't had a lot of Selah breaks in my week. Because it's I got to do this. I got to do that. Help, Jesus. I can't do this. Give me the strength. Give me the energy. I've been battling a sinus cold for the last 10 days and I'm tired, but he strengthens me. In my weakness, he makes me strong. And so I think that's a good daily practice to start to incorporate into our workday. And then at home too, because you don't want your family to get the leftovers.
Right. Oh, that's so important. And that is one place that I am aware of, but I fall short constantly, is I am so needed on a daily basis, kind of from the regular demands of the job. I just run from one place to the next to pick up the kids, to get, dinner going and all these things. And it's I try and be intentional, and it's probably an area that I fall short more often than I'd like to, and more often than maybe most, in just being, making sure that my family doesn't get my second best, that they also are getting, a great husband and a great father. And that's so hard. That's so hard.
It is. I think if your personal life is a mess, that's a really good litmus test. But if your career is thriving, your family's your first ministry. And so my husband and I, we do check in with our kids, and we're how are you experiencing us? What are things that we can be doing better as your mom and dad? Or what have been some things that have been really hard? And I think they have to be our number one priority. And, I ran an in-home daycare for 10 years, and that was never on my to-do list. But when I became a mom, I realized that was my greatest calling. And I would have never had this passion for raising children if it wasn't for my career in childcare. And I got to see, I think I had about 100 kids come through my home that I got to invest in. And honestly, that's the next generation of fill in the blank, financial advisors, executive directors, CEOs, Caribou coffee baristas, whatever it is. But that's our greatest calling is pouring into that next generation. Go back home and ask your kids, how are you experiencing me as a mom and dad? Because if they're not having a positive experience, but at your workplaces, that needs to shift. It needs to be both, right? And so maybe there's areas at work that we need to let go and delegate to other people so that we're not so stressed and tapped and that our family's not getting the best of us as well.
My wife and I were going from an event last night to my parents' house to pick up my girls. They get to spend some time with Grandma and Grandpa, but if this is something that she is saying, and deliberately kind of talking about, it's like, ooh, that kind of hit home of like, ooh, if that's how you're feeling and you're actually aware enough to vocalize that's something that you, regardless of what the perspective is, your perspective is, we haven't spent time just as a family, that we've been, and she made a comment that, we've been running around and you guys have been so busy, or we've been busy, and they're on the tail end of doing swimming lessons, and everything has just been really full from a schedule perspective. Mm-hmm. And she has this awareness and this gift of saying, I don't feel like we need to come back together as a family. And she's 7. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my goodness, like the things that we are like learning from my 7-year-old at 9:30 PM on the drive home.
Right.
And it's just like, okay, yep, we need to set deliberate family time aside, and we need to just be, and, shut everything else off that's going on, outside of the 4 walls of our house, and just be and exist and be with family.
So I'm trying to look up, where are we with our questions? But I think where we were just talking, this would lead into another great one. So what strategies can leaders use to build genuine relationships with their team?
Yeah, I would say one that comes to mind is just disciplines from a concept. I've got some team members that they love to do just like quick hit meetings in the morning with their team. So like it might be
high intensity interval training meetings.
Yeah. So
we're doing burpees. Or help
exactly.
Me understand
kind of all the things. So it's really like a 10 to 15 minute stand up kind of huddle. Like we're just like playing through the highlights, like what's going well, what's not going well, who do we need to contact, who have we been in touch with lately, what does the day look like? And they'll have these deliberate times, these 10 to 15 minute stand-up huddles on a daily basis. We have other teams that they have kind of larger blocks of time dedicated to team meetings and just getting a pulse and a check-in on kind of setting the table for expectations. Like what is expected of you? What is expected of me? What can I be doing better? Where can I serve you? And where am I falling short? And it's just the more often we can implement those things, I think the better pulse we have on not only our smaller teams, but then that has a ripple effect across the organization. We just implemented the EOS system, the entrepreneurial operating system within our organization, and all the way from the executive leadership team down through all of the different departments. And it allows us to have these level 10 meetings where we can come in and we can kind of focus, have dedicated focus time to build out, okay, what are we working on today? What are our quarterly rocks? What are these things that we need to pour into? And what are these things that we need to kind of take away from that are not keeping us on track? And so I think there are so many nowadays, oh my gosh, there's so much content. There's so many different ways of doing things. But if you look at the underlying fundamentals, I think about it from like a sports analogy, that sometimes teams need to just go back to the blocking and tackling, like the fundamentals of like the boring, mundane kind of activities, but those based on your values system, and the values that you've set out as an organization, start to create these good habits and disciplines that not only it seems boring while you're maybe doing it, but the impact that it has over a 12-month period, if you're just looking at on an annual basis from an organization, I think can have really just profound impacts on the culture that you're trying to emulate or create.
That's really good. And that you touched on this next question, how can companies help employees find a sense of belonging and purpose? And those are all some really great examples. One thing that I try to do, like if I obviously don't work for a large company, but being intentional and remembering details of people's lives, especially if you're just getting to know somebody, in their phone contact in the notes, like I'll write stuff down so I'll remember. Or,
that's so smart.
So also I think birthdays are really important. I know other people have different opinions about that, about getting birthdays on calendars. And even if it's just something little, do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to be extravagant, but just you're remembering, today's the day you were born.
Yeah. Birthdays are one of my favorites. I love that you bring that up.
Yeah.
I just I try to intentionally say happy birthday to all of those kind of core people that are in my life, and that I don't do it well all the time, but there's an awareness and an intentionality behind that. But I think that's so cool.
Yeah. And remembering things about their children, or if they went on a trip recently, asking them how it went, it's that builds that personal connection.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you actually practice active listening.
Right.
You remembered what I told you, because there's somebody in my life and I don't like talking to them on the phone because I'll share something hard and they'll be like, oh, that's wonderful, honey. And I'm like, did you hear what I just said? It's like, it feels like you're just wanting to get off the phone.
Yeah.
You're not actually engaging in the conversation.
Yeah.
And so I think that creates a sense of belonging and purpose, is when you remember the little things in their life as well.
Oh God, that's so good. And I think that there's this concept of like, from not just a culture perspective, but it kind of aligns with what we're just talking about, is this concept of like helping versus like holding back. Like, where am I helping in your life? And where am I holding you back? And even from like a culture perspective, like a strong culture makes it easier for both teams and clients, or colleagues, or what have you, to follow through on simple but not easy actions. Like whether that's making a proactive client call, or staying invested during market volatility, or some of these different like behavioral components of when emotion sets in, or when people are going through a stormy season or hard season, how do we lean in and really support them well and care for them well? And unless you really know them personally, and you've been active listening, and you've been doing these things because you really care, that other application, helping them make decisions or coaching them through these moments, is a lot harder. Because there's this component of the deeper you know someone, the more that you know their tendencies, the more you know how they react to things when things are really hard, when they're going through hard things, or you're going through hard things. And there's this emotional behavioral component of, when there's high emotion, we tend as humans not to make good decisions. And we're actually more irrational than we really want to believe. And so to have those people, those core people who know you on such a deep level, that when those seasons come, they helped protect you from yourself. And we talk a lot about that at NorthRock, and like within our organization, and like as an advisor team, and how we work with clients, that, we really pride ourselves on knowing our clients so well that the better we, in this concept of the better we know them, the better advice we can give, and ultimately the better decisions they make and the better their life and the outcomes that we're working toward are as well. And so we talked a little bit about this at the very beginning of today, is that, people want to be loved and they want to feel cared for and heard. And I think sometimes when we get in the busyness of life, that being heard piece of it gets missed a lot because we're just running at too fast of a clip, or maybe we don't really care and we think that we care about certain things, but maybe we don't, or we do and our mind isn't present. And so again, these concepts are very simple, right? These things are, what makes a culture great, or what, how do you build a great culture? I mean, and even just like, how do you handle, the behavioral side of things? I think the concepts and the solutions are very simple, but we're very messy people. We make irrational decisions. We have emotions and they cloud decisions. And so because of those things, it doesn't make the process easy.
That reminded me, I tell my boys, don't make decisions when it's the HALT acronym: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. That's usually, you have to check yourself, right?
Say that one more time.
So it's HALT: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I'm totally blanking on, it's in the Old Testament, but it's a gentleman, a guy. This is going to bug me. But Jesus is like, you need food and a nap. And so he had do you know who I'm talking about? It's in the Old Testament. But I've seen memes go around like, sometimes you just need a snack and a nap and you're a totally different person when you wake up, So don't make any decisions. But you can see it more in kids because they're not as self-aware.
Yeah.
But especially I have 3 boys and I'm like, you need to go eat something. Like your blood sugar is really low right now. You're super irrational, and then just go rest, go take a break.
Yeah.
But I think of that too, because we do, like when your blood sugar is low, you're irrational. Our emotions are important. God gave them to us, but they're the indicator on the dashboard.
Right.
It's saying, something's wrong, but we can't be led by our emotions. We need to be led by truth.
Yeah, that's so good.
There was another post on social media that I saw that kingdom is all about culture. So what does that mean to you?
Where my mind goes right away is this concept that I think that kingdom culture reflects a lot of Matthew 20:28. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve. And I think that in leadership and how I want to be as an advisor within our organization, that means to me that it's about serving before selling, or serving just in general, and really caring before calculating. And it kind of helps with that component that we're talking about of really listening and understanding and meeting people where they're at, whether it be, colleagues or clients or spouse or kids or what have you, and to pause to be able to meet them and to have that deepened relationship with them, to be able to meet them where they are, I think allows you to kind of pause and care before coming up with a solution. Kimberly, my wife, and I think this is kind of the differences between like men and women, is that men love to like solve issues, right? They want to just come in and like solve the issue. And this is a really hard thing for me to do, but a lot of times like Kimberly and I will be talking, after work, or, in the evenings after the kids are to bed, and she's just telling me all about work, or sometimes there's like issues or challenges or things like that. And I'm just like coming up with solutions, and I'm like, I got this all figured out. It's gonna be great. Like, this is what you need to do. Boom, 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 boom. Like, this is super simple. And she's like, no, she gets upset because she's like, I don't want you to solve this. I just want you to listen.
Yep.
And I'm thinking to myself, like, as a husband, as a man, I'm just like, oh, I'm like Mr. Fix It. Like, I just want to like try and fix it. And like, she's like, I don't want fixing. I just want ears, and I just want you to like sit and listen. And like, I'm like, oh, well, okay.
You're not alone in that.
It's really interesting.
Yeah. My husband and I, similar. And I'll just preface, I'm processing right now. Like, I just need you to listen. And then early in our marriage, like I said earlier, I'm a dreamer. So I always have all these ideas. And he would internally be like dying inside because all of my ideas cost money. And I just had to he would just get really stressed out thinking I wanted to do all these things right now. Mm-hmm. And so he finally was able to verbalize to me, like, this is super stressful. You're dreaming out loud. So I maybe wouldn't even tell him I was dreaming. I would just start blah, Yeah. So now I'm like, honey, I'm just dreaming. This isn't for right now. This is like one day.
Yeah.
And so I think he's able to, relax a little bit and listen, because that's just who I am. I get all these ideas and, oh my gosh, this would be so fun. Or it's redecorating the house. All he's seeing is money signs, but I'm like, it doesn't have to be right now, but one day, wouldn't that be so cool?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's this concept there between like, this is like the plan, or like, this is just provisional. Like we're just kind of talking high level. This is very like provisional. Like, there's just ideas that I'm just like throwing out there, like thinking out loud, versus like, nope, this is like the plan. Right. So you have this like, this provisional kind of conversation, was just like dreaming, or this high level component. And then you have this like, no, this is like the plan. It's in the calendar. This is the plan. We're planning on this, versus like, these are the things that we're thinking about doing for the week, maybe as a family, or these are the things as an organization that we're thinking about setting as goals. And I think that that's so critical from a culture perspective, that it's very clear and clearly communicated to the organization or to the teams that these are things that we're thinking about implementing, or these are the things that we're kind of provisionally talking about or setting for goals. Mm-hmm. It's not the plan yet, but these are the things that we're thinking about. And there's still some, timelines we need to put on these things, or these things that we may or we may not do. But sometimes communication is super key, right? Yeah. But sometimes to people that they're hearing that as, this is the plan, this is what we're doing. And so from leadership roles, it's so critical from a communication perspective. You might be thinking you're being super transparent, but people within the organization might be hearing that as, this is the plan, this is exactly what's happening. And that can be incredibly overwhelming, because they're thinking about, okay, well, how are all these things going to be, how are these going to impact me and my daily, work? And I'm already overwhelmed, or, we're already have implemented a whole bunch of different things. To add anything else just seems impossible.
Right. I'm thinking of a situation. So when at a previous job, when we were doing brainstorming sessions, we would call it, this is just a table of ideas. So bring your ideas, because the people that were more of the executors, they would immediately shut down and panic, like you were just saying, because they're like, oh my gosh, you're going to have us do all of this. And we're like, no, we're just dreaming right now. So then they were able to actually be present in the conversation. But I also think, expectations are so important, because at a different job too, we'd have all these ideas and we'd start moving forward, and then leadership would be like, oh, we're not doing that. So we would, put in all this time and effort. So I think laying it on the table, like, this is actually what I want you to do. There's some freedom around that, but this is the main goal. So having that right up front is really, really important, because then that can be really discouraging, where I just put all this time and energy and now we're not even doing that because we misunderstood you.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that is, and it's okay. That if you don't like confrontation, or maybe you struggle with people pleasing, you don't want to hurt people's feelings. It's worse when you don't say what the expectation is up front. Then it's like a double whammy when you're like, oh, I didn't mean it like that. You know what I mean? So we have to get over, it's a fear of man thing, right? We all struggle with it. If you say you don't, I'm going to say you're lying to me, because it's getting to the place in life where we just want God's approval and not man's, but it's these slow deaths. And it's learning how to communicate in love and truth. But yeah, I think those are all really important things around having expectations.
Yeah. And I think going back to that, like knowing people on a deep level and on a personal level and understanding them, and that all feeds into making those conversations, and those, like, whether it be a tough conversation or whether it be just communicating in general, whether these are kind of the provisional ideas that we have, we value your input, or these are the plan components. These are the goals. This is what we're setting out to accomplish over the next days, weeks, months, years, so on and so forth. That deep personal relationship allows for trust. And so when you're coming to people, you're coming to them out of a place of love. So when you're having those exciting victory conversations, or when you're having the really tough conversations, I think the conversation, this idea of it being really, really difficult, I think the more difficult it is, I think the first pulse that I like to try and look at is, how well do I know that person? Because I might be fearing this conversation because I think I know them on a deeper level, or have more trust with them than maybe than I actually do. And so I think it allows you to come into those conversations from a place of love, because nobody wants to be reprimanded, and nobody wants to, I mean, there's a time and a place for, very, hard conversations, but for the most part, when we're just talking about like, hey, like, here's the expectations, and we fell short, how do we get better together as a team? Because there's something that maybe I didn't outline those expectations to you clearly, or it wasn't communicated well, or maybe it was, and there's something else that kind of got in the way, a competing priority that got in the way, and that caused us to maybe miss the mark, or what have you. And so, but that allows us to collectively say, this isn't you, this is us. And how do we support and challenge each other to, get better and move forward, learn from it and move forward.
Yeah, that reminds me of just my husband and I went through a relationship book together, and went to a seminar, and two things that really helped us when we needed to have difficult conversations with each other was to assume the best in one another. And then you come into the conversation with a heart to understand. So, it's asking, it's remaining curious about people versus coming like, I already know what you're going to say. Or, you think this is their heart's intentions, but really it wasn't. Maybe, so if we can have that frame in all relationships, seek to understand and assume the best. I think that really changes the dynamic of the feel of the conversation, even if it is difficult, because then you're not accusing, you're leaving it open for them to share with you.
Yeah. Yeah. We are relational beings, right? We are designed and created to be in relationship, and relationships are messy, right? And there's partially because we're human, we make irrational decisions. We don't always behave like we really want to, or, we might be hungry or tired or irritable, or,
right,
or what have you. And so it goes back to that grace component of like, okay, how do I come in, show up, and be the best version of myself, but where that's truly like, who has God called me to be, and how do I die to myself and really get to know the people around me? And time is always a constraint, right? It's like we come into work and we're trying to, knock out all these tasks and do these different things. There's things that we need to do, but I think having time carved out to really get to know people, I think is important as leaders.
Definitely. Well, Erin, this has been such a fun conversation. I think we could probably talk for another hour.
Easily, yeah.
Yeah, but just to wrap things up, is there any books or tools or scriptures that you would recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, I mentioned a couple of them. These are just maybe more so just things that are more recent or current for me. Unreasonable Hospitality. I just love the book, The Gap and the Gain. That's Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Leading Jesus Way. Mark Dieterning just does such a great job in laying some of those things out in that book. The Advantage, Patrick Lencioni, he's probably one of my favorite authors. He's got so many great books out there. And then I would say one thing, this is more of a comment than on the resource side, but I would say that there's kind of like this hope to just kind of segue into this, kind of this like heartbeat and prayer and hope into this of like workplaces and client relationships and colleague relationships would be grounded in a clear, God-honoring playbook that pairs rational, fact-based decisions with daily acts of service and love, and that we would have the courage to do the simple but not always easy things that build trust and lasting impact.
Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot and you can say no. But would you be willing to pray right now for that person that's listening and they're like, I need to make some changes in my workplace culture? Like
Yeah.
I have my purpose and values plastered on the wall, but actually we're not living it out. Would you pray for that person right now that maybe is like, I need to make some changes?
Yeah. Lord Jesus, we just thank you. We thank you for your love and your grace. Lord Jesus, we pray that you would just open our eyes to the things that are hard, that are difficult, that you would allow us to be aware of our behaviors and actions. Awareness is a great first step. Pray that you would just give us an opportunity to be grounded in your love, that you would allow us to hear what you have and the purpose that you have for our life, and that you would allow us to have this innate ability to die to ourselves and to just build this amazing culture that really has an impact on the community and the world, and that it's not about us, that it's about you. And that we have these great decisions and action items that allow us to make really good decisions, that we have these daily acts of service and love, and that for that person, Jesus, that really needs to hear this, that this be just an awakening. And maybe there's some aha moments, but I would say that take meaningful steps, determine how you want to show up tomorrow in the workplace, and make the biggest impact that you can on your friends, your family, your colleagues, the community, and the world. In Jesus' name,
Amen. Thanks, Erin. This has been really fun. And thank you for your leadership and all of the things that you shared with us today.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet.
Thank you for joining us on Faith at Work. We hope today's episode has inspired and equipped you to live out your faith in the workforce. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend, and join us next time as we continue to equip you on your journey of faith at work. Faith at Work brought to you by the Unity Foundation. Learn more at unityfoundation-alexandria.com.
life, and that you would allow us to have this innate ability to die to ourselves and to just build this amazing culture that really has an impact on the community and the world, and that it's not about us, that it's about you, and that we have these great decisions and action items that allow us to make really good decisions, that we have these daily acts of service and love, and that for that person, Jesus, that really needs to hear this, that this be just an awakening. And maybe there's some aha moments, but I would say that take meaningful steps, determine how you want to show up tomorrow in the workplace, and make the biggest impact that you can on your friends, your family, your colleagues, the community, and the world. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Well, thanks, Erin. This has been really fun. And thank you for your leadership and all of the things that you shared with us today.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet.